Hey YouTube. So at some point on this channel, when I hopefully get some more eyes on everything, I would like to put forward policy debate ideas and do some sort of an open sourced think tank. So someone gives me an idea, or I use one of the several that I have, and I seek out people from different camps, politically, different professions that this policy might affect, and debate with them to hopefully sharpen that policy idea into something better than just simply ideas we debate online. Each discussion applying questions of scrutiny to better strengthen the policy idea over time, and basically just do it using the brains here on YouTube. I would actually like to create a policy or two that's something that, would be a cool little hobby, I think. So I have a few ideas I want to put forward, and I think in YouTube, the big thing people like to do is call out videos. So I think that my policy idea, at least right now, I'm going to try out a call out video. So I picked somebody like Sam Cedar, who we probably agree on income inequality generally, and that there needs to be some sort of redistribution mechanism from the top down. Yet, even if that's the extent of what we agree on politically, we are allies, I think, in this particular battle. As well as Sam, I also think we currently have the tools in place to do this. He wants to change marginal tax rates, and I don't think that idea is as good as he thinks. And the reason why I believe he thinks that's a good idea is that he doesn't have enough discussions with people on the other side that he takes seriously enough to change his own stances. So for this video, I'm going to focus on some of my ideas for this cap on capitalism, and these ideas have actually been through a lot of the mills of debates with people on the other side, and professionals, people in economic fields and whatnot, and some of the things I'm going to put forward are the conclusions of those conversations to maybe just show Sam that there's better ways to get to the goal he wants, and a lot of that comes from speaking with people you disagree with that are willing to help you perfect your idea. So I'm going to talk about Sam Cedar on the PBD podcast, where he's responding to some questions about marginal tax rates. And the reason I picked Sam Cedar a bit here, and I want to just preface, I say this in other videos, when I look, I don't want people to all just be nice to each other. I like opposition media. I think the best person to criticize Joe Biden would be someone like Fox News. The best person to criticize someone like Trump would be MSNBC. So I'm opposed to political tribalism, political factions putting a check on each other. But it can't be hateful demonization. It has to be more friendly team politics, but still team politics. So my goal here is not to attack Sam Cedar in particular, but to demonstrate that his actions, that I consider the ones I consider to be bad faith, are actually hurting Sam's particular agenda in the long run, and in this case, our shared agenda, since we both think income inequality is a problem and should be worked on. So I'm trying to convince him to stop, because he's making it harder for people that are as toxic as him to actually affect this change. And I know this is because I have taken Sam's side generally on this goal here, but have had these discussions with people. Yeah, I got into this already a little bit. So I've had discussions with people that push this idea forward in a way that Sam has yet to even consider, because he won't even talk to people that seemingly disagree with him. And if he does it in a way that he's just trying to best them, prove them wrong, talk down to them, show he's the alpha Chad of the YouTube community in a way that doesn't actually help him more than maybe his reputation. Something he can't do because he is so intolerant and toxic to anyone he disagrees with. I basically just said that. He's so disrespectful and unlikable when it comes to covering the other side of politics. Why would anyone want to reach out, to stick their neck out for him in good faith? Why would anyone even assume he's a good faith actor to work with? So, now the dude is pretty intelligent. He's pretty solid at arguing points for his side, but they're always very one-sided, as we'll see here. And he leaves a lot open to not that he won't ever consider because he won't ever speak to somebody to push back on him, to tell him, hey, maybe raising a marginal tax rate over a certain amount of money isn't a great idea unless you're at a certain amount of money that's like inconceivable for people to have more. $3 million as he's proposing this video is not a lot of money in today's economy. So if you make the cutoff $3 million where 90 to 95% of your money is taken by the federal government, then you're not going to have very wealthy people. It does help with redistribution a bit, but there's a lot of things that can be bought for more than $3 billion that's just going to be put out of business. It's going to hurt our economy in the long run. There's a lot of investment people can make with more money than that. So I'm going to argue against his marginal tax rate idea, even though I'm technically on the same side of him. Again, he's very intelligent. He's not a dumb guy. He's just really toxic and giga alpha chatting a lot. So in my podcast here, I already have really long videos, so I'm not going to dive into everything Sam Seder says here. I disagree with a lot of most of what he stands for politically, but I want to talk more about his tactics of doing that. So, also, anybody listening, you've probably heard the basic entry-level argument to Sam's point. Sam's point is 90% marginal tax rates at the top bracket, above $3 million, and he cites that this is the way it was 60, 70, 80 years ago. And the common argument that everybody makes is that there were also bigger loopholes, and when Reagan consolidated the taxes people paid and changed the laws on it, he also closed a lot of those loopholes as well. And so, in a lot of ways, you saw more taxes coming in as a result of his changes, despite lowering the tax rate. But I'm not going to get into that. If you want to hear an in-depth counter argument to Sam, go look that up. But I'm expecting you to know these things before you even click on my videos. I want to take that discussion to the next level and not just give you the basic counter arguments that you can see anywhere. So this is a policy video. I'm not going to be citing much. I'm more going to just be giving some examples of the claims I'm making about people's character, and that's it. I'm going to be talking a lot in hypotheticals. And again, it's a very raw policy idea that I have that I'm going to be putting forward. So I want those who are going to be fact-checking me to come forward and say, hey, I'm a doctor and this is why your policy doesn't work for this reason, or I'm a lawyer and maybe you should think about this change that we've seen 20 years ago with a similar policy, or something like that. That's the conversations I want to have. So that's why I'm not going to be using citations, because I want to be fact-checked and pushed back on by professionals who are going to help me turn my policy into something better. So I don't think I've ever heard anyone put forth a particular idea that I'm going to be putting forth here yet. I've never heard anyone really mention anything like this. I think it's unique. I think I've thought of something that nobody's touched on yet, but I don't know. I could be wrong. My politics started the day I started paying attention. So I don't know a lot before maybe the Clinton administration in terms of policy ideas suggested in the past. So maybe my depopulation zone idea that I have or this particular idea about a cap on capitalism, maybe these have actually been proposed and tried. And if somebody has that for me to look into and maybe look at why it failed or what they did differently and try to build my policy off of that, it just gives me a baseline. So if anyone has that, send it to me. I'm more than all ears. So I'm going to get into that in a second. I got a lot of things to preface before I jump into that, especially I'm taking a shot at somebody's character. I need to back that up. I really think clearing that up first is the best way to handle that. So I'm going to start with what just happened recently. So Emma Vigeland was on the Tim Pool podcast, and she made some pretty bad arguments. And Tim Pool did a pretty solid job calling her out, and he actually got a little angry at one point. I want to go a step further in Tim's argument here and try to talk to Sam and Emma about this whole alpha male chest pumping. Everyone's scared of me, that's why nobody will talk to me anymore. When in reality, that just means his ideas are going to just be trapped in this tiny bubble and never get out because nobody wants to talk to him anymore. And thus, they always stay frozen and isolated because he'll never accept any valid pushback. So, as I went over in my Perception Gap video, when you start to see this toxic and fear or hate-driven level of separation from reality, you start seeing people kind of become a tribal gatekeeper for their own side of politics, and this is exactly what we see Sam engage in when he smears people like Tim Pool and Joe Rogan as right wing or actual right wingers as fascists, even though there's really no fascists in today's modern U.S. politics at all. And he just attacks people's character a lot. And I'm not saying that that's 100% the wrong thing to do, but you're trying to have political discussions and cover politics, then maybe you shouldn't constantly just attack people's character. And for older people, or even maybe younger people know who he is, I kind of see Sam Seder as kind of like Rush Limbaugh, but of the progressive movement. He's really toxic and angry and just constantly attacking. And he's not a dumb guy. Rush Limbaugh wasn't a dumb guy either, but there's just a level of anger and vitriol and hate for the other that both of them just seeps out of them. And I'm talking like pre-OKC bombing Rush Limbaugh as well. Like, as he got older, he kind of mellowed out a bit, but you could find some clips online of like old school Rush Limbaugh, and you're like, damn, Seder is just as hateful as this guy, just towards a different group. So even when he's on the PBD podcast, and this PBD is like super gentlemanly and polite and respectful, you can still see Sam yelling over people, getting loud, getting a little bit rude. His bad manners are coming out even when he's being treated to like the highest echelon of respect by an accomplished dude, you know, like, so I know here Emma. Okay, so Emma, I'm going to just set the context of this clip. Emma just got done saying she was in favor of vaccine mandates for kids, and Tim asks her if she's also in favor of parental rights, because she accused Tim of not being in favor of parental rights because he wanted some books removed that he said had pornography in them from 6th grade schools. So we're going to pick up there. Let me pause this. And
creating a society that is not that is more, yes, moral, but it's based on outcomes, not just.
That's what I just pulled up. Like, I mean, I can read to you again.
Right, but pull up the American Pediatrics study.
But we're talking about.
Can I ask a hypothetical while you pull that up? If it is true that.
Oh, that might have been the wrong clip. Sorry, I was watching through all of this. Where did I put it? There it is. With it.
Moralist. I don't have like the arrogance to believe that my personal preferences for how my life would be lived should be imposed on other people. I'm trying to make a argument for a case for, I'm trying to make a case for a broad set of policies that are going to make sure people are as happy as they can possibly be and can live their life to the fullest. So if you want to impose your morality on people, it sounds like fundamentalism. For me, I'm in favor of
a real argument.
But if most
I am having a real argument.
That's not an
You just said your morality
here's
is
a study.
Oh man.
Here's a study that shows desistance rates up to 95%. Hold on. Desistance rates are shown up to 95% with non-intervention. So then we would lean towards non-intervention. And you said you're a fundamentalist. You didn't make an argument.
No, earlier you talked about how your morality is what you want to dictate in terms of this policy.
Wait,
you see, this is what I was talking about with Sam.
Okay.
Right? The inability to grasp philosophical concepts. When I explained to you that you are opposed to parental rights because you're in favor of vaccine mandates, right? I don't think you can understand the duality of the statement you're making. Are you in favor of parental rights can go in one of two moral directions? You do have a moral stance.
I wasn't talking about parental rights. I was using that as a way to talk about your statement on parental rights. And I fully grasp concepts of morality.
And you want to impose that, then you too would be a fundamentalist, and you've made a nonsensical statement. If you want to make an argument about why me using this data is incorrect, I'm all ears. If you want to tell me I'm a fundamentalist,
I haven't seen the data, so I can't.
Well, then don't make an argument about it if you don't know the data.
No, I do know the data. I use the American Journal of Pediatrics. I don't know the data that you just pulled up.
You did not look up desistance rates. You did not look up anything other than what fits your narrative.
Tim, what you just said is that you want your morality to dictate policy.
No, I didn't.
I want people to have freedom to
certainly
do what
did not.
they want.
That's just not true. I said that everyone's view on a question like parental rights is dictated by their morality. You do have one as well. People have a moral framework. You've told me that you're in favor of public health. That is a moral stance. So are you a fundamentalist? Do you want to impose your moral?
No, I talk about politics. I don't talk about things that are so abstract. I talk about.
You're in favor of vaccine mandates or not?
Of course.
That's a moral position, not a scientific one.
No, it is a public health position.
Well, it's sure your morality dictates that the government can impose a medication on people against their will.
Because I'm trying to create a
That's
society.
a moral question.
No, because I'm trying to
That's
create.
moral.
Sure, I think I am more moral.
But you just said you weren't. You said you were not a moralist.
No, I'm not. I am dealing in politics, and politics can create outcomes that are moral or immoral, and I'm dealing in the ones that I think will create the most.
So you're a
the
moralist.
best outcome. No, moralism. Moralism in the.
All right, well, you can watch that whole thing if you want to, but I know Emma isn't Sam, but they use very similar tactics. They have very similar tendencies. As you can see through this, she's giving a condescending laugh to laugh off things that he's saying instead of actually addressing them. Tim is clearly calling out her double standard when it comes to her morality. There's nuance. There's better reasons why she's not, but when it comes to his morality, it's just a smear attack. So you can watch the whole thing. He lectures her for about 20 minutes. He gets a little angry, too, when she accuses his show of catering to neo-Nazis and then they bring up an example where a mass shooter used to watch Sam Harris and made response videos of Sam Harris, and why isn't Sam Harris considered a show that mass shooters are attracted to? And she has no answer for it. Turns out she's never even heard the argument, just like we saw here. So I'm also watching this and I'm wondering, doesn't Emma wonder why Tim and Sean know all of her data, know all of her studies, know the details of those studies, and she's never even heard their arguments before? And that's kind of my main point here is she came into this completely blind as to what they actually believe. She thinks Tim Pool's right-wing, and he's not. He has a couple stances he agrees with on the right, but that's what a moderate is you could potentially agree with both sides 50%, or one side a little more than the other. That's a moderate that leans one way or the other. So just because you agree with the right wing on just one issue does not make you right-wing, especially if you think there's 100 issues out there that you could potentially disagree with them on. So I don't know. Throughout this entire 2 hours, she's stuttering. She's making claims that she can't back up, and then she ends up backpedaling on them. And they even accuse her of using somebody else's claims because when they start to dig into the details of her claims, she doesn't know them. She doesn't even know the things she's bringing into the conversation. Even the neo-Nazi thing. Tim's like, how do you link me to this guy? He watched your shows. Well, how do you have proof of that? He had 4 screenshots from your show, mostly talking about your guest, or 2 screenshots from your show, and that was it. That was the only tie to Tim Pool. And then she said his show caters to all neo-Nazis because one guy watched 1 episode. So, I don't know. It's pretty hard to watch. She does actually get the better of Tim in a couple of the smaller exchanges, but ultimately, if you watch this whole thing, she took a big hard L throughout the entire thing, and it really showed that she didn't do any prep walking into this, because again, she didn't know a single one of their arguments that they make videos on. They talk about all the damn time. To not even know these things walking in the gates, to me, is crazy. It's crazy lack of preparation. So we're going to move into more of the actual thing I'm going to critique. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a character analysis of the people that work with and next to Sam Cedar, who he would probably consider his equal. Well, I don't know about his ego, but he may consider his equal. So this is the actual clip here with Sam Cedar that I want to go into, and I don't know how much of this I'm going to play. Just enough to show you what he's talking about, kind of give you a couple hints of even how rude he can be to normal, good people.
I would return to the tax policy when we had the greatest, sort of the widest economic expansion shared by more people as a percentage of our population than any other time in this country, which was in the 50s and the 60s. And I would return to the tax rates more or less there. So your top tax rate at that time was 90%, top marginal rate, for every dollar over $470,000 you would earn. So that would be equivalent to around $3 million today. I think we should return to that type of tax
You want it
scheme.
to go as high as 90% at the top marginal tax
At the top marginal tax rate. So understand, that only kicks in with every dollar above $3 million.
I hear you. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's the famous Reagan situation where I think it was anything over $200,000 at that point. This might have been in the 40s, that he would only do 2 movies a year because he'd get paid $100,000 per movie, and then he wouldn't even do a third movie because he would only get 10% of the revenue because he's like, fuck it, I'm not doing another movie.
Yeah.
So when
Reagan started telling that story,
Yep.
you know who he was working for when he started telling that story, right? He was going around, I think it was working for GE, trying to convince people not to get Medicare for all. I mean,
I want to stop it right there, and that's the first example. So instead of actually addressing the point, he attacks the character of the person being used in the example. So even if Reagan's bullshit story was bullshit, the whole thing was made up. Let's say he was actually doing what Sam said. Sam never actually addresses the point of the story, and they have to use a second example. So here, they nail him down on it. They do a good job, but.
If Reagan could have gotten 3 movies or 5 movies, he would have done it.
He's just a liar. He's a corrupt liar.
He happy to do that for his career. Believe me. Believe me.
What's the top marginal tax rate right now? 39%? What is it
I think
right
it's
now?
37, 39%.
So you're in favor?
I will say this, though, just to finish up that Reagan story. I will say this to you. I remember being in L.A., and taxes, top line had hit whatever the all-in was, 57.5. I don't know what the number was, around 57.5. You live in Brooklyn. So 57.5%. People are like, what the hell is going on here? There was this girl who was a top realtor in the San Fernando Valley area, one of the top realtors. Her picture was on all the benches. Everywhere you would go, you would see her. And she was one of the realtors making very good money. She's making $500,000 a year income, doing good for herself, whatever the number was, $400,000, $500,000. One day, I stopped seeing her pictures on the seats. And I'm at Wood Ranch with my wife, and I said, hey, you're the girl, right? She says, yeah, I am. She's with her husband and her 2 kids. I said, what happened? We haven't seen you lately. She says, it's so funny you ask. My husband and I made a decision that the moment taxes got so high, it was more important for me to be stay home. It wasn't worth me working to pay this much in taxes. So there's a part of what he's saying. Yeah, whether he's going to do the movies with
that's
chimps
great.
and all
No,
that
I
stuff.
guess-
But there's a part of it that kind of incentive needs to be there.
America would not have suffered by the lack of Ronald Reagan movies. And I would
Okay, you're
also
trying to be
argue.
funny.
I would
I
also
got you.
but I would also argue that, like, I guarantee you, there was no less houses that sold because that one particular broker stopped selling houses at a certain point.
So go to it. So right now,
I don't think that's a problem. I really don't. I mean, I think
to raise it to 90%.
yeah, no, I don't think. I think
No, this is. I half agree. He's not wrong here that we don't live in 1930. I'm going to get into that with actually my proposal as well. But just saying I don't think this is a problem ignores the actual problem that they're trying to elaborate. So at first, he dismissed it, and they nailed him home. He made a joke, and then he finally said, okay, tell me what you really think. And he's like, I just don't care that much. Don't think it's a problem because not as many houses, or the same amount of houses still sold. Yes, you're absolutely correct. But the point of that is the person that is best at being the realtor would be the one who gets the people into the house that they want the quickest without the least amount of money spent, and everyone's happy on every end of that negotiation and sale. So let's say that good realtor sells the 6 houses she wants and then drops out in June and stops selling houses, and the next person steps up, but they're not nearly as good at the job. So the 4 of the 6 houses that they sell go to somebody who probably would have fit better in a different home, but didn't even get to see it because this realtor just didn't occur to them that this would be a good fit. And this person ends up paying a little too much for the house, and they're just not happy with the sale. And then that person at least gets their 6 sales, and they drop out by October. And then the C rank comes up, and the C rank really comes in and just bungles all their sales for the last few months of the year, and none of those people are happy. And that's the point, is that you can't ignore this feature that people often will pay more money to somebody that's better at a job. There's a hierarchy in terms of ability, and yes, Sam is right that the same amount of houses might have sold, and that's just something that should be emphasized on. But what he's ignoring is that the quality of those sales probably went down each time because the best person got their money and then dropped out of the market. So It's a principle in economics as well. Like the person that handles money the best, when you put money into their hands, you're going to see the best outcomes for your money. So that's why instead of just investing in the stock market, they say to get a broker, somebody that knows what they're doing, a specialist in that, because they can manage your money better than you will be able to, because they're a professional and you're just an amateur. Same idea. So let me see if I covered everything I wrote down here. So I do talk about Walmart here, and the reason why is because Sam probably hates Walmart, and he probably wouldn't give them any praise, but for a while there was only there was only one model of store, and Walmart kind of came in and okay, so I'm talking about more innovation, people that are actually pushing Walmart out of business. Like, there was only Walmart for a while. Now, Walmart did a lot. They advanced the model of the department store, and I'm also going to get into that for my idea as well. I just use Walmart as a constant example here. In Sam's point where he says no big deal, the part that he is right about is now we do have adequate competition on that level. If Walmart is not the grocery store, there's a Food Lion, there's a Kroger, there's a KJ's, I live in the South if you didn't guess by my selection of stores, but there's a lot of different alternatives to get your groceries in the same neighborhood. So now maybe there's more to Sam's argument that this isn't such a big deal because we have so many people emulating the A-team, but I don't think he understands that these stores only got to this level of being the A-team in terms of distribution of groceries because of the competitive market that forced them to be that good in order to compete with Walmart. So it's almost like you're handicapping, knocking out the needs of the system that got you to that point in the first place because you're at that point. So let's keep going for a little bit because he hasn't gotten into taxes too much yet.
Top line,
You know,
3
what you're
million
talking
plus.
about is sort of the Laffer curve, actually, right?
Yeah.
You know the
You
Laffer
love the
Arthur
Laffer curve. You're
Well,
a big fan of it, apparently.
I'll
'cause-
tell you what I love about the
Yeah.
Laffer curve is that we had a perfect example we had almost like a perfect model of what happens with the Laffer curve, right? Like the Laffer curve argues that the higher the tax rate goes, the less inclined people are going to be to generate income. And then because they're generating less money, there's going to be less tax receipts collected by the government. Art Laffer was Sam Brownback's #1 advisor in Kansas. Do you remember this when Brownback became governor? He basically gave over his entire tax structure to Art Laffer. Back gets plucked out of Kansas and this guy around it all.
Creating content.
Yeah,
You sure?
sure.
You'd continue creating content.
I wasn't doing YouTube for a long time.
How do you make a living today?
I have membership. That people pay. I get ad revenue from different places.
Okay, so let's just say the membership that you get from Patreon or whoever it is, okay? What if their fees went from them keeping 5% to 60% to 90%? Would you continue creating content?
I mean, I would probably have to cut back if there was that.
Exactly.
Well, but that's only because it's such a big change.
No, that's the part about incentive, Sam. So your audience gets to enjoy you.
I'm not saying we'll cut the revenue for these businesses. I'm saying that the amount of
You
money.
have no choice, though, because you're paying these guys. You need the revenue.
No. I'm not suggesting we cut revenue for businesses. What I am suggesting is after that revenue comes in and we divvy up and I have my net profits, then my taxes would go up. But I will say this, like if, let's say, the taxes went up on me personally, would I stop going on YouTube? No.
So would you be able to scale it how many employees you got working for you right now?
I'm not talking about cutting revenue.
I get that. How many employees are you working for you right now?
We have payroll, I think, like 6 or 7.
Okay, you got
people.
that's a small business you got there, right?
Sure.
6 or 7 people. Okay. If all of a sudden AdSense went up, the fees for your Patreon, I don't want to offend you when I say Patreon. I don't know who you use. Whoever you use that's got your membership stuff that you got.
We use Fans FM.
Okay, there you go. That's a shout out to them. So Fans FM,
Right.
Fans FM,
Fans.fm. It's actually a great
Fans.fm. Okay,
service.
fantastic. So if they
They
raised
take
it,
less than Patreon.
if they take 50% all of a sudden, and they say YouTube says AdSense goes to 15%, would you be able to employ those 6 people?
No, if my well, I don't know, but probably
Maybe that's because you're rich.
No,
because
no. Probably not. But I'm not suggesting that we cut revenue for businesses. I'm suggesting that what is left over from revenue, if it's over $3 million, that goes into the pocket of the owner of this enterprise, that $300,000,001
Yeah.
gets taxed
Let's
at
have fun with this.
90 cents.
Let's have fun with this. So here's a question for you. And I kind of know what your answer is.
And I want to be clear on something.
Yeah.
All right, let's stop it there for a second because I really like PBD. I think he's great. I really think he bungled this question here several times in a row, and he just failed to explain a circumstance that Sam's marginal tax rates would actually affect. He keeps talking about situations where we cut revenue for a business, and Sam's not talking about that, and neither am I. He's talking about the people that profit. So, it does disincentivize work, but it does it in a different way, and it needs to be addressed properly by the right-wingers in order to get the left-wingers on board, and I really feel like PBD drops the ball here. I'm done with videos, I think, for right now. Let's turn the music back on. So Sam needs to have a policy or political answer. Oh, they all need to have actual, okay. So my example here is, what if your favorite ice cream, I'm actually going to use Checkers and the Baconzilla as my example, but what if your favorite ice cream had to pay 90% of their tax after 4 months of production? Let's say that they hit $3 million, the owner of the company hit $3 million of personal wealth at 4 months in, and instead of running his business for another 8 months, he just said, fuck it, shut it down for 8 months. I'm not going to make any money off of it, and going into work every day is a huge hassle. I already got $3 million for the year. I'm just going to spend my next 8 months in Cancun, and then we'll open back up in January. Find some new employees. It's just an ice cream shop. There goes your favorite ice cream. Like, what is going to prevent that with this marginal tax bracket increase? You could also see a different situation where there's a quota on products, where instead of making enough ice cream to cap out in 4 months, they just downsize their factory, fire a bunch of people, and downsize to the point where they only produce enough ice cream over the entire year to make that $3 million for the owner. And then that's it. They never grow past that size because the owner is hitting his cap. So why should they? This is what needs to be explained better, I feel like, by the right-wingers talking about this, is they're not talking about revenue for the business. They're talking about profit after. But that still does affect. It's just one more layer removed. And I'm trying to give you examples on how it actually affects. So it also leads to something you hear about every now and then called like artificial scarcity. So Nike drops a pair of Jordans, they only make 5,000 pairs. And they hype them and they look really good and they're made of nice material and people want them, so they could charge $500, $600, $700, $800 a pair. Where if they actually made 5 million pairs, they would actually probably make more money, but they would not make more money per pair. And so that artificial scarcity jacks up the price. And what I propose actually is seeking to end that to a degree. Yeah, I'll get into that. I don't want to spoil it yet. We're getting there. I want to keep you roped in here because I got a lot more to get through before I get to my proposals. So there's a factor I still need to explain. I just quickly want to cover that. What we see here is circumstance. I talk about monopolistic competition. So it's a state of the markets where name brands compete based on their name brand. To put simply, if I want a Checkers Baconzilla, and someone says, let's go to McDonald's and you can just order extra bacon on your burger, I'm going to tuck and roll out of that bitch and I'm going to walk my ass to Checkers to get my Baconzilla. And even though both are cheeseburgers with bacon, there's a particular way that I want mine made when I want that particular burger. And maybe food isn't the best example because you can't put intellectual property rights on a burger, but shut up. I'm using it because I love the Baconzilla, and it's a really easy example to follow. So don't take it that literally. I'm just using food as something to help explain my point. Deal with it, nerd. So how are we going to address the first argument? Well, there's a few methods. Marginal tax rate, breaking up massive firms. These are things that have been tried in the past. Marginal tax rates, as I've been covering, breaking up massive firms. I could get into that. There's a bunch of arguments of why we shouldn't do that anymore. Getting rid of companies that are too big to fail and subsidies for their actions, like bailing out big banks and whatnot. And those are all cool things. And Cedar makes this argument about bailing out banks prior, which I agree with generally, even though I think we get there from two different paths. I would also say we go after patent laws, and you might pick up. That's kind of where I'm going to go with this. This might raise some people's alert system in justifiable ways that I want to address right up front, and there may be some I miss. So if there are, please bring them up. But I think the biggest issues with tinkering around with patent laws is intellectual property, diminishing property rights, and pushing back against, as well as destroying the incentive structure to invest money and invest in inventions with low success rates. I'll get into all that when I start talking about the medical system, but I'll dig into both of these things as well, and people who have these concerns will hopefully feel spoken for when I address your arguments here and how I'm going to handle them, because some of your concerns are valid. Any concerns I don't get into, leave me a comment, but I do want to include this part. But what I want to propose is a restructuring of patent laws around the cost of research and development and or production, where we can earn back a generous amount before the generic version of whatever good is being patented is sold. We could do this in many ways, and one of the ways I'm going to propose is a government-imposed patent or subsidy. So sticking with my Checkers example, how could we ensure that I will have a Checkers Baconzilla year-round, even though we're raising the tax? We're going to raise the highest marginal tax bracket, and I'm going to propose when you hit $1 billion, your marginal tax bracket's 100%. You hit $1 billion, we give you a pat on the back. We say, great job, and you earn no more money. You're 100% tax on your income after $1 billion, and you get a cool little plaque to hang up on your refrigerator. So, how can we ensure my Checkers Baconzilla is going to be there even when it puts the owner in the highest tax bracket? Well, the thing is, why is the owner going to get out of bed once he's making that yearly $3 million? He can arguably shut down his store for the rest of the year, or, as I was saying, he could downsize, and instead of me being able to drive 2 blocks to get my Baconzilla, I have to drive 2 towns away because he only wants to own 4 stores over the course of an entire state, because any more than that, he makes more than $3 million, and it's not worth his hassle. It's not worth him getting out of bed to stress over making only 10% before state taxes on his income. So he doesn't do it. He just cuts it off at $3 million, and now there's only 4 places to sell the Baconzilla in my entire state. So, less jobs, and that's something that hurts the worker, because with less jobs means less negotiating power for the worker. So it ultimately hurts Sam's plan. These marginal tax brackets will only hurt Sam's plan in the long run. And again, his point is there could be alternatives, and I'm going to get into that, because a lot of the alternatives, and food's not a good example again, but a lot of the alternatives are limited because of intellectual property. You can't make an iPhone because Apple makes that iPhone, and regardless of how much money they make back from it, or et cetera, you still can't make an iPhone. You can just emulate it in certain ways that aren't too close, or you're going to get sued. So, I'm putting that same idea into your head about phones. What if you could only buy 200 iPhones per state a year, and then Apple cuts you off because after that they make so much money they don't care anymore, so they just stop selling it, put their employees on a seasonal leave, and shut down for the rest of the year. Or Juuls, or ice cream, or whatever. If not, there's other factors in the market, like if we see demand higher than a supply, you see prices go up. So instead of your ice cream being $5, it could now be $15, because less people are willing to pay $15 for that ice cream, and the higher cost amount balances out the supply and demand issue. It's just things that the market will do when higher supply than demand. It is what it is. So either way, disincentivizing this work is bad. And this is something that Sam never really addresses. He just keeps saying, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. Let's do it anyways. And you could tell from this podcast that PBD is not on board. He's never going to vote for anything like this because none of his concerns were heard, validated, or addressed. And that's what I'm trying to do here is validate, and address those despite being, So I got 2 ideas on how to handle patents, and I'm sure this will grow as time goes on, but we're going to keep working with Checkers. So Checkers invents a new burger called the Baconzilla, and they make that particular intellectual property of theirs. They go get a patent for their Baconzilla. Now, everyone else in circumstance 1 is able to copy that patent. And unlike now, where if they copy a patent too closely, they get sued, instead, the government says, okay, X group invented this, so they have the patent on it, so they actually get a 10% tax subsidy on this particular item, where anyone else is allowed to make it, but they have a 10% tax increase. So we're essentially putting a localized tariff on those who don't have patent protections, but still allowing them to make and sell the product. It just might be more expensive for them to make it, more expensive for them to sell it. They have stepped down in the market from the person that actually invented the intellectual property, that actually put in the research, that actually did the R&D. So in other words, or another way you could say this is Checkers R&D department spent $100K on labor, $200K on goods, and $200K on other bills that were going into the inventing of the Baconzilla, and they should be able to earn $5 million, let's say. They spent $500,000, they're able to earn $5 million before the patent expires. Why? We're going to get into that in just a second. Why it's that high anyways. But this incentivizes people to still invest. Sure, your investment, you might not be able to make 100 times what you invested, but you're still going to be able to make 10 times what you invested if the product you invested in actually takes off. And this might really risky investments might get hurt from this, but generally this isn't going to put a huge hamper on investments. You're still allowing the investment system to give incentives to people to invest in somewhat more risky. They can invest 8 times and fail, and the 9th time succeed and still make money because you're making 10 times your money back. So in a sense, you're still incentivizing investment here by doing this, and somewhat risky investment as well, which is something I want to address. That's a concern from people that hear these policy proposals that you're going to disincentivize investment. And no, I'm not. I'm addressing that point. I think that's an important point you're making, and I think a consideration should have been made, and such I made it. So you are heard. The second proposal is money-based. Yeah, so I either got the subsidy / higher taxation reward / punishment system, where a patent just means you get charged less for production of the product, and that would work for some things. And other things, the second plan, which is a money amount on the patent. So this would mostly affect big businesses and work as a redistribution method, method of allowing some people who didn't have a giant R&D department to still compete, but it also compensates the people who did the research handsomely. So I feel like this would destroy the artificial scarcity also set up by monopoly. So what I was talking about with Jordans, you might have to pay a little bit more in terms of the cost of production. Like if Nike jacks up the price of their Jordans to $1,000 when it only costs them $3 to make the shoe, then that's on them. But Adidas isn't compelled to match that price and beat it. Adidas is only compelled to charge, let's say, 25% more than Nike would if Nike was operating on a 2-cent profit margin. If they're operating on a $200 profit margin, then that's their business, but Adidas can undercut them at that point for that same exact shoe. It's just not going to say Nike Jordan, it's going to say Adidas on it. But it'll be the exact same shoe otherwise, or New Balance. So if Nike does gouge their prices with something that they have a patent on, of intellectual property that they have a patent on, they could still be undercut. This would prevent unfair practices like that extreme price gouging, I feel like. And this is something that might have to be worked on a little bit more. There are people out there that see expensive things as a status symbol, and if they want to stay icy, they're still going to go out and buy them Nike skirt, bang, bang. But otherwise, people that just want a nice pair of shoes can go buy the Adidas version for significantly cheaper, and everyone's happy. And yeah, so I want to dive into a more real-world example for why you would need it to be generous to the R&D. Okay, yeah, this is just kind of backing up, validating concerns. I can see it in a certain, 10 times what people get back is very generous, and I'll give a brief rundown as to why. It generally works is the way this generally works is you build your business to be, sorry, I need a drink, thus elevating the level of business done in that sector. Now, those who want to compete with you have to match, if not beat, the level of service or professionalism or cleanliness that you provide. You may think Walmart's the devil, and this is kind of the point I was going into before, that you may think Walmart's bad, but they did revolutionize and min-max the shopping experience. They only make 2 cents every dollar they bring in. They've made everything cheaper, better, faster in terms of a retail experience. And now if you want to compete with Walmart, you have to match Walmart's customer experience, if not beat it. So you might think they're evil, and you might be justified in that thought, but you can't deny the fact that Walmart's existence has made retail shopping very efficient and cost-effective in the United States. And part of the way they did that was screwing over their workers, but you know what? We're ignoring that for right now because I'm trying to make a point. So my real-world example is going to be medicine and the generic forms that come out potentially, I think it's 7, 8, 9 years later. I don't care enough to look up that little factoid. If you fact check me on that, and it's 9 years. Good fucking job. You know, like, I don't care. But leave a comment below because it helps. The reason is because the majority of the funds that are collected for medical research. Reason is because a majority of times funds are collected for medical research. It doesn't result in much of anything. So yeah, most of the time people invest into this new research for a potential drug, it crumbles, nothing comes of it, they don't invent anything, and that's called a risky investment. And sometimes the risk is super high because you're delving into things that have never resulted in a particular medicine. And maybe I could find just some examples if I dug, but there are some examples of particular medicines that were made with really risky research that had almost no chance to give you anything, and they found some cool stuff out of it. But I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to tell you it exists, and you're going to take my word for it. So we can say in these circumstances, 5 to 10 times your money back is pretty good, and I know that's gonna fluctuate from sector to sector. Like if you're not doing medical research, and if there's not super risky investments in their sector to invest in, like 90% of restaurants fail or whatever in the first 5 years, so you got a 10% rate that your investment in a restaurant's actually going to go somewhere. So you shouldn't be punished for making those somewhat risky investments. Because there are certain sectors where you just have a high rate of failure. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration, and we should handle this more algorithmically in terms of what we allow these patent holders to make in terms of money before the generic version kicks in. It's going to be a little more nuanced than the type of law we have now. I believe in an algorithmic solution. I think we could eventually program computers to run the government for us based on that. I have ideas with that with migration as well. Legal migration should be based off of our economy and the demand for workers of that particular skill set that we're looking for. And that's a whole different story. So just keep in mind, the U.S. is responsible for a majority of new medical studies, for inventing new medicines, and for new medical equipment. Now, we do export the actual manufacturing and production of especially new medicine to other countries. I think Germany and China are the two biggest manufacturers of the actual medicine, but it is invented in the United States. I'm not going to cite any of that because, deal with it. This is a policy video. Now, I'm not trying to make political points. I'm just trying to give you an argument as to why a situation why you'd want them to make a lot more than just double their money back off the patent. I can give you 10 other ones. Really, just don't attack the fucking example. Attack the actual point I'm trying to make, please. So, also keep in mind that 2/3 of the U.S. like their health care, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I was just getting into the fact that, Bernie Sanders' healthcare really isn't that popular. So if you're coming here just to say U.S. healthcare bad, you have to take into consideration 2/3 of the U.S. likes their current healthcare, and 2/3 of the U.S. likes the current price of their current healthcare based on Gallup polling. So you can go look that up and debate that with somebody because I don't care. As for my marginal tax rate argument, I lowered all the tax brackets slightly from what they are now. And I said this earlier, $1 billion, you get a 100% cap, no exemptions, no amount of donations can get that removed. $1 billion is the most personal wealth you can have as an individual. So spend it wisely, and if you want to continue working after that, you are now a philanthropist, donating your entire salary to charity. There's no reason for any more than $1 billion. You did it. You hit the big B club. Go out and live your life. You know, if you want to continue working, feel free. And I think that we also have to compromise on other things. If you hit the big B club, then the death tax, as Republicans call it, should not apply to you. You should be able to hand down, since we're putting such a high cap on the end of wealth, I say we get rid of the death tax to a certain degree, if not completely. We're going to have reasons for Republicans to sign on to this policy and saying we're getting rid of this particular tax that you hate, and we're going to implement one that's more fair, that doesn't hurt the incentive system and doesn't punish you for trying to give your kids a good life. I think you could make the argument for Republicans to get on board with this. At least you'd be throwing some red meat to them in the form of getting rid of the death tax. So, once again, if you could use that to sway some people on over to your side, absolutely. Now we have the exceptions for some things, such as new technology like the cloud. So this is why I talk about new sectors. And I work in programming a bit, and I currently work in business solutions, but I have a programmer. I went to school for that. So the cloud, I'm a nerd. I like looking at stuff like that. When you look at market share of the cloud, I think it's like 6 companies. The last time I looked, like a couple of years ago, it was like 6 companies that all own like 20%. It's an oligopoly. And this is an oligopoly because not a lot of companies have the money, the technology, and whatnot to compete in this brand new, highly technological, highly advanced sector of the economy. So I think there would have to be some certain age limit of that particular sector before the legislation kicked in, or something along those lines. Like, I don't think you can make a new invention and then 2 years later say that not enough people around the world are selling this brand new invention. You have to give it some time, that sector some time, people some time. I don't want to stifle innovation and invention. The cloud is great. It's a huge advancement. I don't want to stop things like that or punish things like that. So I think that these newer sectors should be exempt to this particular type of legislation for a while, so we can allow them to foster a real breakdown of market share, not just this early stage breakdown we see. I feel like if someone didn't want to pay for this massive tax, then when they get close to $1 billion, they'll start spending more and more and more and taking very risky investments. So this would actually help with the very risky investment thing. You know that you're going to hit $1 billion and you don't get any control over any more money. Maybe you start spending like a madman, and that's also good because you're taking riskier investments, or maybe just stimulating the economy. It prevents the billions and billions being hoarded by 500 people. I don't think people should have more money than you can spend in a lifetime 40 times over in the bank, just sitting there and accruing interest. It's just, it doesn't make logical sense to me. I have a few unanswered questions about my top marginal tax rate idea, and I'm going to need some more debate from people that disagree. One of which is going to be inheritance. I do think the death tax should be reduced, but should you be able to pass your business down to your son? Like, you hit $1 billion, you're going to retire. Here, give your 18-year-old son the business for 3 years so he can hit $1 billion, and give it to your cousin so he can hit $1 billion. And I do get that's how empires collapse. But should it be legal? I think so, but I definitely can think of some arguments why it shouldn't. Bigger firms, I'm going to need to basically debate that one with some people that disagree with me and try to just hammer out the details. Bigger firms are able to do these large scales and cap. The cap will make people not want to grow their businesses large in the future. So this leads to a different problem, and this is another thing that I don't have a great argument to address. So you can only make more than $3 million. Why are you going to keep growing your business and growing your business? And what's going to incentivize you to make that big piece of technology to get you to the top of your industry? it does still stifle investment in a certain way. And it's the big investment, like the global investment from these multi-billion-dollar companies. And I don't really want to affect them so much, but even if this policy doesn't affect them, what I explained earlier still does. Like, you have no incentive. I mean, there's so few people at $1 billion that I don't think it would really ruin their incentive that much. But once you hit $1 billion, you have no incentive to really go into work the next day under this program. So what's going to keep that $1 billion CEO, who is the genius behind his company, there still pushing his company forward? And I don't think I have a good answer for that. What I do have is that we could do more collaboration between businesses and, smaller businesses where they could work together to do these giant international deals and whatnot. But it's more efficient when you have one massive giant company making that entire move, like Disney bringing their movies to China or something. It would go better to have Disney doing it instead of 8 companies working together at a board to do it. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I need to have that that conversation with somebody as well. I also want to ask actual economists a question if high income equality might lower the potential inflationary effect of the amount of money we have in the supply right now, or we had pre-COVID. When I watch and read financial reports for the last 20 years, they keep saying that we keep printing money, we keep doing this and that, and inflation's right around the corner, and it didn't come. And I am hypothetically proposing that the reason this inflation that was predicted didn't come until now is because that money was all getting hoarded by the top 1%. That income inequality was going up and up and up, and that was actually staving off potential inflationary effects we'd see from that amount of money being pushed into the money supply. And am I onto something there? Am I looking over something? It's just a thought I have, and I need an actual economist, someone that does it more than just a hobby like I do, to talk to me about that. The thing here is kind of finding people that are educated, that you disagree with, that are still willing to engage in your idea and help you get this idea that they disagree with to a better spot. And I keep hammering this point home in all my videos that you need people from the other side. So you need to be out there in good faith trying to find these people, because they're not everybody. Most people aren't going to be that person you're looking for that's at the same level of intelligence as you and able to push back on certain subjects to a point where it actually helps you grow. You need to be constantly searching for these people, and I guarantee you Sam Cedar has probably pushed hundreds of them away. So now let me talk some more shit about Sam Cedar, and then we're going to close the video. I think Sam is a very rude, nasty, mean, toxic person. He's unpleasant in debate. He constantly isolates himself from opposing voices because of how toxic and hateful he is. I don't like watching him. I don't like seeing him talk. I think he's unlikable. Something about him personally turns me off. Even though he's a good source of information, I have to force myself through his videos. Whereas PBD, I probably disagree with actually a little bit more than I do with Sam about politics, but he's such a gentleman that I enjoy watching him. He has such a good decorum. I almost you look up to him in a sense, how that's, in my mind, PBD is how a man's supposed to act. And it's admirable. Sam is just detestable most of the time to watch. You can go watch a show. It's just every video is just a smear headline of somebody he's about to attack. You click on it, and it's just 10, 15 minutes of them just bashing somebody. A lot of it doesn't have any place in reality. It's all opinions, and they just continue to do it. I don't think it's good. I don't think Sam's a bad person. I think that he's trapped in that tribal politics mindset, and I don't know. My goal here is just to show that actually hurts him more than it helps him. My policies that I suggested with patents have been run through the mills. I've talked to Republicans, I've talked to libertarians, I've talked to isolationists, I've talked to progressives, and a lot of people like this idea, and it solves a problem that most of them agree with. Republicans do think that income inequality is a problem. They just disagree on Sam Cedar's method to fix it because they don't want to destroy the economy in the process. And so I think I propose an idea that does that. It does what the left wing wants while also addressing the right wing concerns. And I feel like Sam Cedar could do that for all of his policies if he was just less of a dick. So do better, you know? Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, like, sub, all that. Thanks, bro. Take it easy. Yeah, I'm shocked you made it here. I even ran out of music. I'm gonna take the other 15 minutes and we're just gonna, or 15 seconds, and we're just going to go all the way to the hour. And, I just want to ask, how are you? Like, I'm over here talking about me and Sam. How are you? Like, I genuinely care. Like, I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you're scheduling in a couple hours of play a day if you work hard, and a couple hours of work if you play hard. I just, take care of yourself. Life's about balance. And I genuinely want you to have a good one.